but I was helping to manifest the very situation that I was bemoaning. Eckhart Tolle goes on to say that identification with your mind creates an opaque screen of concepts, labels, images, words, judgments, and definitions that blocks all true relationship. It comes between you and yourself, between you and your fellow man and woman, between you and nature, between you and God. The other day I was speaking with a friend who had recently returned from a trip to a third world country. And in conversation with fellow travelers, the question came up, how can these people be so happy in light of their circumstances? And the answer was given, because they don't know any better. In our complex society, we always think we know of something better, a better way to do things, something better than what we have right now. And we rob ourselves of that happiness. One of my favorite metaphysical teachers, Roger Duncan, says, we think and believe what we think and believe. Sounds like a nonsensical, circular statement. However, when we analyze it, we definitely see that it's true. Because when we believe something, we look at our perceptions around us and we skew them to conform to our basic beliefs. And then those perceptions reinforce and strengthen our beliefs. We're trapped in an ongoing pattern of behavior. And the only way we can escape it is through some event that bumps us out of that mindset. Last month at the Unity People's Conference in Kansas City, one of the keynote speakers was Mark Nepo, an inspirational author and poet. In his book, Finding Inner Courage, he talks about the stories that we tell ourselves. We repeat them over and over, and after a while, they're not actually all that true, because just like playing telephone in the back of our heads by ourselves, we subtly change them to conform to what we think our reality is in our mind. We embellish them, and after a while, they're really not all that true. But we tell ourselves these stories to give ourselves courage in the moment, and to help us along and give us comfort along life's path. And I had done this after my divorce. I told myself the story of what happened with the marriage. And then a couple of months ago, I was going through the Love, Courage, and Achievement program that Randy Ferguson offers. We were talking about experiences in our past that give the foundation to our beliefs. And I remembered an event that occurred earlier on in my marriage, which was quite hurtful, and I subconsciously formed a wall around myself, a distance from my partner, in order to protect myself. And the aha moment was when I realized that it was that, as much as anything else, that led to the eventual demise of the marriage. So the story that I had been telling myself all these years about what really happened wasn't all that true. So I can't tell that story anymore, even to myself. In addition to the false reality, which this mindless chatter creates around us, it also blocks our true communication with others.
Just, if you could pull the little button down on that.
No, it disconnected and the connection fell down here, so I'm not going to worry about it.
Okay, why don't you use that one?
Is this one working now? Okay. Okay. Thanks, Jeff. Is that better? Okay. So in addition to the false reality that this mindless chatter creates around us, that was prophetic. It also blocks our true communication with one another, with other people. How many times have you been speaking with somebody while you're formulating the reply in the back of your head instead of really listening? Or how many times do we judge or try to force somebody into a preconceived expectation or stereotype instead of just simply listening to what they're saying? But even more importantly, how does this constant chatter block us from the awareness of our true selves, our beingness, if you will? In mindful meditation, we tend to, or we attempt to, block out all the chatter and focus on just what's going on in our heads at that moment, our beingness with our Creator. And this appears to be a rather passive activity. But I submit to you that it can be a very active process as well. By mindfully observing our thoughts in every moment, we can try to block out or guard against the constant repetitive thoughts, the critical thoughts, the merely emotional reactions. In his book, The Untethered Soul, Michael Singer states, "Events that happen in the moment belong to the moment, not to me. When something happens that doesn't fit my model, if I just observe it and let it go, it will begin to break up my model. To live spiritually is not to allow the events of the moment to rule my thoughts or emotions." In this practice of mindfulness, we obtain peace. Even in eating, oftentimes we want the television set on, or we're reading a book or a magazine. But when we mindfully chew our food, appreciating the taste and the texture, giving thanks for it, our bodies are much more capable of digesting and assimilating that food. So mindfulness is peace. There's just now, there's no anxiety. There's the opportunity for a lesson, for a teaching, a new awareness or understanding. Last weekend, I had the pleasure of traveling with my son and his family. My son, Greg, daughter-in-law, Susan, and the two little grandkids. My grandson is 5 and his little sister is 3. They're not used to sleeping together in the same room and having to go to bed at the same time, and they were both very tired, and that was the situation in the hotel room. So the three of us adults were sitting in the other room, and they were in the bedroom, and we could hear the little girl chattering away, and her older brother was telling her to be quiet so he could go to sleep. And pretty soon he's yelling at her, and she's crying. So Susan gets up and goes in and settles things down. She comes back out. It begins again and begins to escalate. So Greg goes in there and, with the authority of Daddy, settles them down. So we were sitting there, and it was all quiet in the other room, and I suggested that they go out and enjoy the fresh air and get a glass of wine somewhere. So they left, and a couple of minutes later, I hear chatter, chatter, chatter. The little one is sleeping, is lying in the bed, and I go in on 2 or 3 forays. Finally, I go in there, and I just stand there next to the bed, and I'm staring at her with a very firm expression on my face. And she's looking up at me with her big blue eyes with kind of a little half grin on her face. And the eyelids are drooping and drooping, and pretty soon they're closed. And she's fast asleep, and so is her brother. I went back out to the other room, and I sat down, and I was amused because I remembered my own children at that age talking to keep themselves awake at night. And I suggest to you that that's what we're doing in reverse. We chatter to keep ourselves asleep, and we miss the moment. Don't miss it. We'll have our meditation. Maybe. I don't think they were used to me being finished quite so early. As we come into our meditation, let us sing recap. I ask you now to close your eyes and take a deep breath. Set aside anything you may have brought with you today, whether it be a physical object or a care or concern that you brought with you from this morning. Feel the floor beneath your feet and the chair supporting your bodies. Take a deep breath in. Let the air fill your lungs from the bottom all the way up underneath your collarbone. And let it out. Let go of all the busyness of your mind. And just be quiet and still in this moment. In this moment that nourishes our soul. Be aware of this moment. The music that Doug's providing for us. The whir of the fan. Just this moment right now. Breathing quietly. Aware of your breath coming and going at its own rate. Not having to think about it. What is the teaching that might come to you in this moment? The awareness of your own special, unique being. The understanding that you are loved and that you are love. Let the awareness of that just fill your body, tingling with that wonderful, exquisite awareness. And with your next breath, come back to this space and this time as we continue on with the singing of the Lord's Prayer.